Alright, so two more Superman movies left to talk about and revisit, plus a trilogy, and we'll be done with this. Welcome back, everyone, to the channel of Appetizer Joshua. It is your host, Joshua Drake, and we're finally getting into the two Superman movies that a lot of people just like to trash talk the most. Two of them, which I find to be not as bad as you think. I got issues with both, but they're not that bad. This one, especially, in celebration of his soon 19-year anniversary. That is, of course, the fifth entry of the Superman saga, Superman Returns.
Bring it on! Now fly.
This came out in 2006. This was directed by Bryan Singer. Controversial person, but very good director. Written by Michael Dougherty and Dan Harris. And this serves as a homage of Superman to Superman 2, and also ignores Superman 3, Supergirl, and Superman 4. This time, we see Brandon Routh as the titular character, with Kate Bosworth, Kevin Spacey, James Marsden, Frank Langella, Eva Marie Saints, and Parker Posey. Let's talk about how this came to be. After the critical bomb that was Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Superman on film was killed for the good part of 20 years. And then, so through that 20 years, we got TV shows like Superman, the animated series, the Lois and Clark Adventures of Superman show, and the very infamous Smallville. But also he had appearances in the Justice League cartoons, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. So after a series of projects to resurrect Superman failed, Warner Brothers found Bryan Singer to direct Superman Returns in July 2004, which we need to talk about this elephant in the room. Bryan Singer left X-Men The Last Stand, the third movie of the X-Men series. Another movie that came out this same year in 2006, which I don't hate, but is flawed, to do this. And not only that, it put X-Men The Last Stand in the situation that it was in, which we all know about the production history of this and that. And so what happened was they were able to get the ball rolling on this movie, and not only that, they also had to find a new actor to play Superman since the original actor, Christopher Reeve, passed away. So they wanted people like Jim Caviezel and such, but Bryan Singer believed that an unknown could play the part. And so they went to people like Tom Welling and Henry Cavill, Glenn Howerton and Sam Heughan, even Chris Pratt at once. But we finally got the casting of Superman with Brandon Routh. And therefore, we got the ball running. Kate Bosworth was casted as Lois Lane, and as a recommendation from Kevin Spacey, who was the only actor who could be Lex Luthor. Then also Frank Langella took over for Perry White, as originally Hugh Laurie was unavailable because of his commitments to House. Parker Posey was also offered as well. And they also wanted Aaron Ashmore to play Jimmy Olsen, but his commitments with X-Men 3 didn't want him to. So after all that, they filmed the movie in 2005. They had to go through Marlon Brando's estate to use effects of him. And so John Ottman came to do the music, but also used the classic John Williams theme. And the budget originally was $184.5 million, but the final production standpoint was 223 to 263 million, with a further additional million spent on marketing. And I remember the marketing for this movie because I was a kid at the time. I didn't see the first trailer, but all I heard on the TV and such, there was this new talk about a Superman movie called Superman Returns. I'm like, what's this Superman Returns? I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then what really caught my eye was they had a video game of the same name, which a lot of people did not like the game, but I know some people did play the game and have fun with it. I did remember playing a little bit of this game on PlayStation 2, but I never really got to play the full sets. But it did have a trailer for the movie, and so that's what caught my eye. And so the years went by until 2009, where I finally watched the movie for myself. And so what happened was, when I first saw this movie, I hated it as a kid. I thought this was the worst Superman movie. I thought it was boring. Nothing was happening. It had little to no action. The usual criticisms. Over the years, there's one little thing I have to say about it. The more I kept watching that movie, the more I kept going back to it and being like, this is actually not so bad, actually. What is wrong with me? Was I on drugs or something as a kid, as a 9-year-old watching this? You know, movie came out, it got good word of mouth, but unfortunately, this was the 9th highest grossing movie of that year. And unfortunately, while audiences like the movie, but a lot of people didn't care for it here. And even Bryan Singer has gone back and said this wasn't his best work. How does this movie hold up now on rewatch? Because I was really excited to rewatch this elsewhere. Even though I have the DVD, I don't have the DVD on me right now. But I do plan to upgrade it to Blu-ray with that anthology set from 2011. That being said, going to rewatch this movie now for the review series, I have to say, I'm going to get a shit ton of hatred for this and the next one, which is controversial. So get your pitchforks and torches out. Light all your toxicity and fire in the comments, because I can say Superman Returns. I love this fucking movie. I just do not understand the hate that this movie gets. I can understand some of it, but I just don't fully understand what it is that Superman fans don't like about this film. Yes, is there not enough action? Okay, I'll give you that. Is it too much like the Christopher Reeve movies? Yes, but it's kind of like the bookend to the trilogy of Christopher Reeve era Superman. But that being said, does that make this a bad movie? No. In fact, there's honestly some things I really do like in this movie. We'll talk about some shit I hate. Ooh, I got a few things I hate. One of them I actually don't anymore. But let's talk about it. While Lex Luthor plots to destroy Superman once and for all, he returns after a long absence to a much changed world. Lois Lane and the world has moved on without him in her life, and society has learned to survive without him. But when Lex Luthor conquers up a plan to destroy Superman and destroy the world with his land situation, which we'll talk about that, he has to come back once more and be the hero that we know and love, as well as finding out that he has a son, by the way. Starting off with the long list of positives in this movie. First off, I have to say Brandon Routh does an excellent job as the title character of Superman. I think Brandon Routh, this was one of his first big movies, and he was just a boy from Iowa, and he got casted in the role to play this part, and I was very excited. At the time, we didn't know who he was. This was his big first movie, but I think his performance is great. He's not nearly as great as Christopher Reeve, but considering the shoes that he had to fill, I feel like he does a very strong job. He gets the mannerisms down. He gets the swagger down. He gets the character down. Let's just say that. And I feel like Brandon Routh does a fantastic job in the role. He's definitely has grown over the years to be one of my favorites to play Superman in live action. And I think that he just does an incredible job in here. Of course, you're having to go from Christopher Reeve to him, so I will say right now, I definitely did like the performances. So I felt that he does a great job at bringing the Superman lore to it, but also wanted to bring his own stamp into it and really just commit to what he would do as Superman. And that's what I really love about Brandon Routh's portrayal. He has to deal with a world that no longer needs him, a world that no longer wants him. But I feel like his performance is very good. I've heard loads of criticisms with this movie. People saying, this movie is bad because of Brandon Routh. It's Brandon Routh's fault that Superman sucks. If you want to chalk that up to somebody, you need to chalk it up to Bryan Singer, because the same motherfucker y'all praise for X-Men, yes, controversial figure, I know. I feel like he does a very strong job in the role as Superman. I think he really does a good job here. I like the fact that this is more of a story-driven version of Superman, but I will say he did a very good job in the role. Equally as good, this is going to be a pretty big hot take. Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. I think he's the best movie version of Lex Luthor that we've ever gotten in movies. And that's a lot for me to say because I love Gene Hackman. And I really like TV versions like John Cryer and Michael Rosenbaum, who would be my second favorite Lex Luthor. But I think Kevin Spacey, first, I know all about the shit about Kevin Spacey, okay? You ain't gotta tell me in the comments by the time y'all watch this video. We are talking about the film, okay? Got it. But I feel like Kevin Spacey, he plays the joyous side of Lex, but he also just plays the very sinister side of him. And I think Kevin Spacey, for all of his wrongdoings, I think he does a very good job here. He does have the moments where he's doing the Gene Hackman isms, but I think Kevin Spacey, he makes it enough to be his own Lex Luthor. Even in the scene where he has to stab Superman, which I will talk about, but I like his take on Lex Luthor, but he also plays a more darker and more bitter. You also have people like James Marsden as Richard White, which it's funny seeing him in this because I do like James Marsden as an actor, even in Sonic the Hedgehog movies. But what confuses me is you left X-Men 3, The Last Stand, as Cyclops and got killed in the first 20 minutes, which I know you had scheduling conflicts because I'll listen to the audio commentary of X-Men 3 on my Blu-ray. But you left that movie for this, and you barely do anything in this. You kind of should have stuck with X-Men 3 because that movie needed more Cyclops to step up and be a leader. Frank Langella is Perry White. I think he does a strong job. Sam Huntington is Jimmy Olsen. He does a very good job in his role. You may know him from Jungle to Jungle and Being Human, and also shows like Rosewood and Detroit Rock City and Veronica Mars. But I think he does a very strong job. His face looks very similar to Millie Bobby Brown. You put a picture of both of them on top of the screen, and kind of get what I'm saying. But I think he does a good job here. You also have Parker Posey as Kitty Kowalski. She's more based on Eve Taskmaster, but this is a different version, a different henchwoman for Lex Luthor. And a lot of people give Parker Posey a lot of crap in the movies, but I enjoy watching her. Whether it's this or Blade or Trinity, as flawed as Blade Trinity is, I still get some enjoyment out of it. Scream 3, all of those, I think, really do. She does a good job in this movie, and there's no exception here. I do wish they did more with her character, but I did like her. Tristan Lake Lebu, he plays the son of Lois Lane in Superman. This is something that's kind of on the right end because they don't tell you who is which son is he. Is he the son of Richard or is he the son of Superman? But as you watch the movie, and there's one moment where he's using his Kryptonian powers and he reacts to kryptonite, you start to get the feeling that he is Superman's son. And that's something I feel like if they made sequels to this, if people were more responsive and more positive to this back in 2006, which is almost 19 years by June 28th, this and movie's anniversary. I feel like we could have got more with Superman and his son, and how does he deal with that? Fortunately, we got a CW series in Superman Lois, which explored the Super Sons very well, surprisingly to my opinion. But I think he does a very strong job in the movie. Marlon Brando also appears posthumously as Jor-El, which he died during the making of this movie in 2004, so they had to use footage from him by Richard Donner and complete it with CG imagery. It's pretty much the same lines of dialogue from the original film, but it is kind of nostalgic seeing Marlon Brando in this. And that's some of the CGI that does hold up into this movie. So that's one thing I will give credit. You also have Cal Penn, which, if you know Cal Penn, you know Harold and Kumar, Go to White Castle, and Love Don't Cost a Thing. So it was nice seeing him in here. He doesn't get a whole lot of lines here as one henchman, but it's just nice seeing Cal Penn. I do like him, especially in the Harold and Kumar movies. So. Also, other people, you have cameos by Noel Neal from the film serials Superman and Atom Man vs. Superman. Richard Branson, you also have other actors playing the henchmen. So I know there's someone I left out, but we're gonna save her for last because I do have to get out this one criticism of this certain actor and performance. But I would say everyone from the cast does a good job in terms of their roles and what they're being asked to play. I can also say I do like not only Bryan Singer's direction here, but also the storyline they choose to go with. Setting it 5 years later, and you see how the world has reacted to not having Superman around. How does Superman deal with that? How does he deal with finding out that he has a son, which a lot of people like to criticize that, saying Superman is a deadbeat dad, but you try being the superhero and the love of your life doesn't tell you that you have a son. Let's see how you handle it, because I feel like that criticism of Superman Returns is just invalid. How is he supposed to know he has a son? Lois Lane, she didn't call him, she didn't email him, she didn't even Snapchat him, which you can't Snapchat people in this era of the Daily Planet in this movie. I'm just saying, that's a criticism I think is just blown out of proportion. Like, Superman's a deadbeat dad, which he does have a nice moment at the end where he does talk to his son and uses the words that Jor-El said to him, which again hinted that there could have been more with the son if you did more with this version of Superman. But because the movie came out and didn't do too well as Warner Brothers thought, that never happened. But you see how people have to react, how does Superman react when he gets back on Deadly Planet, and also checking in on everyone, seeing how things are doing. Checks on Lois Lane and see how he's doing with her new husband, which that's another criticism people like to complain about, is Superman is a stalker, which I'm sorry, how the hell could Superman be a stalker in that? He just stepped on the conversation for a few seconds. That's not stalkerish. He just wanted to check on Lois Lane and see how she was doing. So the stupid criticisms that people hold towards this and the next movie I'm going to talk about is fucking ridiculous. Because, for one, Superman is not a stalker. He just wants to check on Lois and see how she's doing. If that's the love of your life, you would too. But that I actually really do like. And also, one of the biggest strengths of this movie is the fact that this is self-contained, as being a homage to the Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner era. You do get your moments of hope with Superman. You do get some fun moments there when it comes to that. And they do recreate a lot of things here. And for 2 hours and 34 minutes, I definitely really enjoyed this. I definitely really had a good time when it comes to this rewatch. Of course, It's shot very well. Newton Thomas Siegel. This movie has beautiful cinematography, gorgeous atmosphere. Even though we'll go back into it, there are some moments where some of the cinematography such is a little too dark. I'm not sure if that, but we'll talk about that. But I actually think the cinematography is really well done in this movie. I can also say I feel like editing-wise, John Ottman and Elliot Graham does a very good job in terms of the editing here. You do get some good pace moments, but also when it needs to have action, you get action, which this is one criticism I will give. But I think the action for what we do get out of it, I definitely really enjoy it here. And there's some nice atmosphere to it when it comes to this. The scale is really good here. I love the effects here. It feels like a throwback in here. And in terms of the production design, Newton Thomas, Guy Hendricks dies, he recreated everything from scratch. It definitely taking pages from what the original Christopher Reeve movies did, but it looks like you're back in the world of Metropolis. Even though this was 2006, I will say they did a good job for 2006 standards. It's not my favorite version of Metropolis, but I will say I do like that version, of course. When the movie does have its action, you do get your Superman action. There's great moments I've always liked, even as a kid, and I did not like this movie that much as a kid. You have Superman saving the plane from crashing. You have him recreating that first comic where he gets the car and saves Kitty Kowalski. Superman going through the world of Metropolis and just stopping things, whether he's just using his freeze breath, just putting the Daily Planet safely in a position. Also, even saving Lois, her son, and Richard from the boat that Lex traps them in. Bryan Singer really did understand what the director was going for in the vision of the concept and such. It deals with the idea of what if the world did not need Superman. That is something that, which while the tone definitely is there for the Superman, it definitely does go a little bit into a bit of depression side of that. Because if the world didn't have Superman, you would have a lot of bad problems going on. Which is why I'm excited to see what the 2025 Superman movie is going to do with Superman trying to take on different problems of what's going on in reality, but also being a Superman movie at heart. And while I can definitely get into the criticism of them using this theme, I'm not going to, but the John Williams theme and the title sequence is still awesome. I still love that title sequence. It's still a great piece of cinema with the title sequence. And John Williams, they brought back the theme, and I was very happy with it. But John Ottman does a really good soundtrack. It has some great moments into the soundtrack, like the opening credits. Of course, you have one of my favorite tracks, which is So Long, Superman, which plays at a very infamous moment in which Superman, this is a scene I used to hate as a kid. Superman gets his ass handed to him, which I hated this moment as a kid because I had pretty much had the same reaction people had with Dark Knight Rises. I don't like seeing my superhero get his ass whooped and be vulnerable, but So Long, Superman, the way it plays, it starts off heroic, but it also starts off pretty emotional and sad, but also goes to a terrifying aspect when Lex Luthor takes out the shard of kryptonite and then walks through Superman, picks him up and just yanks it into him and then says, "Now fly." That's some dark shit for a PG-13. That is some dark ass shit. It's badass, but it's epitaphic. And got me emotional on rewatch this time around.
Now fly.
Also, in terms of speaking of getting me emotionally heartbroken. The scene in the hospital where Superman is actually, when we think Superman is dead, this was a moment even when I first didn't like the movie. Said to myself, did we really just kill Superman off in here? And you see that the doctors are trying to revive him, but they see that he's not human. And I like the way it's done here. Supergirl will also do a scene similar like this later on in the TV series, in the episode where Supergirl gets beaten up pretty bad with rain. So I would say visual storytelling and directing and music by John Ottman really plays a part here in helping me get emotional over that scene. So I really think the score is amazing, and I think it was fantastic. It was supposed to be John Williams, but he was busy doing Revenge of the Sith and War of the Worlds. Everything I love about this movie, I love. From directing, the visuals, acting, the storyline, to everything. Even some of the effects holds up. You have Rhythm and Hughes doing some of the effects. You got ESC, you got Sony Pictures Imageworks, Framestore, CFC, and The Orphanage doing the effects. It's awesome to see those effects be awesome. And I really definitely, some of the effects are cool, but some of them have not aged the bestly, unfortunately. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say this movie is perfect or a masterpiece or anything, because I do have some issues when it comes to this movie. One, I do feel like this movie is a little bit too long. And while the 2 hours and 34 minutes is decently paced, and I'm never bored, there are a few moments where it's a little slow. I'm like, okay, we can trim this up a bit. We can speed this up a little bit. We can focus more on this, more on that. I just feel like some of that pacing could have been a little tightened up in here. Again, it's perfectly paced at 2 hours and 34 minutes, which makes this the first ever longest Superman film of the 21st century. And this was the first Superman movie of the 21st century. It's well paced, just some slow spots. Some of the CGI in this movie has not aged all that well, because there are certain moments with Superman flying and him smiling and such, and also some other moments which I'm not going to criticize the one moment with Superman flying up in the sun. That is one of my favorite shots in a Superman movie. And I just love that. It's hopeful, it's motivational, it's influential, and it's just a really good moment there. So I will say some of the effects in this movie are good, and there's some good practical effects, but some of the effects in this movie have not aged the best, unfortunately. As much as I do praise it, this being the biggest strength, the fact that it is like the Richard Donner Superman, this is also one of the biggest weaknesses for a lot of people, because you do have some interesting ideas like Superman being the sun and why the world doesn't need Superman. But I feel like if you reworked a few things around and focus on that and do it in like Bryan Singer's Superman, I feel like it would have benefited with a much more stronger reception when it comes to this movie. I also feel like that is one of the biggest elements that does hold this movie back. Also, I will say some of the side characters, like some of the henchmen, don't really get to do much. Richard White, James Marsden, he don't do a lot in this. So if you come to see James Marsden get some screen time, you're kind of wrong, because he doesn't do shit. Which is why you should have kept him for X-Men The Last Stand. But he made that choice to do this. Also, I have to get into it, because this is the only person in this cast I have not mentioned yet. Lois Lane. Now, let me just say, I like Kate Bosworth as an actress. I think she's a decent actress and stuff like Blue Crush or 21 and such. And I'm sure this is not her fault. I do think there's moments where she is giving it her all as Lois Lane. Unfortunately, she is the biggest miscast in this entire movie. While she does look the part, she does have the sassiness down in some parts, while she does look beautiful in this film, and while I do think she makes the character work, I just feel like she doesn't do a whole lot in this movie, and it feels like she's kind of either sleepwalking through it or she's kind of phoning it in some parts. Now, there are some parts I think she does fine in, but when you stack up to Margot Kidder, that is a pretty high bar you have to go, and unfortunately she just doesn't meet the qualifications in some parts. Now, her chemistry with Brenda Ralph, I actually think is very solid still. And there's moments individually where she is trying, but I can't help but feel like this is just a noticeable thing where it feels like she's just phoning it in and not give it 110%. And honestly, I feel somebody else like Maggie Grace or Maggie Q or Michelle Monaghan or even others would have done a hell of a lot better when it comes to this role. So, unfortunately, while I do like her as an actress, I think she's the weakest link in terms of the cast as Lois Lane. Not that she's entirely bad here, it's just, yeah. And also for the title of Superman Returns, this is my last criticism. It kind of feels depressing here in some moments. But I get what Bryan Singer was going for with the story he wanted to tell, with the ideas he had here. And despite it being a retread almost of Richard Donner's Superman, I give it credit for at least trying to do something different with terms of the story on why we don't need a savior like him in 2006. Also, what's tragic, why the fuck is this movie not on 4K? Like, seriously. You can put the Christopher Reeve movies on there, but you can't put one little Superman movie on 4K because of whatever reasons. I think there should be a 4K that's like Arrow Video or Warner Brothers or somebody, and that way you can fix the color grading in parts, and the color scheming will look a lot better on 4K. Not that I have a problem with the way the movie looks, it's just, it's noticeable. But overall, to wrap up this lengthy, praiseworthy defense, I don't think Superman Returns is that bad of a movie. Does it have its issues? Yes. I think you needed more action. Some of the CG doesn't hold up. It does feel like a retread of Christopher Reeve. I do think it could have been paced better, and I feel like Lois Lane could have been done better, despite Kate Bosworth's best efforts. But do I enjoy the movie for what it is years now? Yeah, I do. I think Brenda Ralph is awesome. It has some fun action when it's there. I like the story. It has good atmosphere. It's a nice tribute to Christopher Reeve, Superman, which this movie is dedicated to him and his wife, as they both died in the same decade, 2004 and 2006. I think that Superman Returns is deserving of another chance. If you were one of those people who did not like Superman Returns the first time around and you thought this movie was just lame or boring, check it out again. You actually might come around to appreciate it. And it's definitely in one of my favorite Superman movies. This is at least number 6 or number 5. We'll see how this goes when I do an updated ranking of the franchise with 2025 Superman. But I think this has become a highly misunderstood superhero movie ever since its debut. Again, just like the next one, Man of Steel, which caused us to get a reboot and didn't work out with the DCEU, which is why we got this movie. There's a lot of people who just don't like this movie, and between this and Man of Steel, I just don't understand why. I'm gonna go ahead and give this an epitastic for being an epitastic little legacy sequel to Superman 1 and 2. So, Ghostbusters Afterlife and Star Wars Force Awakens, Superman Returns did it first. That was my lengthy 30 to almost 45-minute long review of Superman Returns. What did you guys think of this movie in the comment section down below? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or are you somewhere right in the middle? I want to have a conversation and interact with you guys. So if you guys are watching this, please give this a video a thumbs up. Be sure to like the video and comment. Be sure to share this video with your friends. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you won't get notified when more videos come up. Also, if you like sending any money to my Amazon wish list, you can do that as well in the description box down below. To my Chime and Cash App. If you like to send me anything from my Amazon wish list, absolutely go on and do that. I'll give you the safest way to do it. Also, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify on the Epitastic Live section, I would greatly appreciate if you give it a 5-star rating. And that just leaves the last live action film we have to talk about, Man of Steel. Ooh, this is gonna be fucking awesome to talk about this one, because I got some shit to say, but also some problems. But as always, stay epitastic, join the epitasticness, and you guys keep it cool as always. And I'll see you in the next video.
Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, all my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay epitastic, join the epitasticness, and you guys keep it cool.